Deep, we are live.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Deep Sidhu. I'm with Department of Public Health, Environmental Health Division. Today's presentation is regarding creek fire recovery, debris removal. The debris removal process is in two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 entails the removal of household hazardous waste and any kind of waste that was on your property. Phase 1 cleanup was conducted by US EPA. They have completed 99% of the cleanup, and there was no out-of-pocket cost to the property owners. And I want to thank US EPA for doing the great job, being very professional, having fluid communication, and setting goals and completing those goals during this weather-changing challenges. Phase 2 process involves the signing of the right of entry form, which gives permissions to the city, county, and state to access your property for the purpose of cleanup activity. Before I talk more about this, I would like to introduce our presenters today. John Thompson, he's the Assistant Director of Public Works and Planning for County of Fresno. He's also the Director of Recovery. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening. My name is John Thompson, as Deep stated, and I am the Acting Director of Recovery for the County of Fresno. First off, I'd like to thank everybody for taking your time this evening to participate in this virtual meeting. I'm hopeful that this meeting will be of value to you and help you in completing your right of entry form. Also want to thank our partners, Cal OES and Cal Recycle, for being on the meeting tonight. It's always helpful to have expert partners like those with us. And lastly, want to ask that any of you know of any of your neighbors that may not be as internet savvy as you are, please provide them with our phone number, as it's important that we get as many parcels signed up for this phase 2 debris removal as soon as possible. And lastly, I wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next, we have Elise Orada from Cal OES. And we're very thankful she could be on this presentation, and she has valuable information for us. Elise, please introduce yourself.
Hi there, this is Elisa Rada with Cal OES. I realize I probably show up on your computer as Dave Palmaville, who so kindly let me borrow his computer for this meeting. And I just want to also say thank you so much for being here. I can't imagine what you've gone through, but I really appreciate your attendance here so that you can hear everything that your county is doing to support you and this program that we've joined up to present to help you get back on track. So thank you.
Thank you, Elise. Also, we have Anthony Toto from Cal Recycle. He's the waste management engineer for Cal Recycle. Anthony, please briefly introduce yourself.
Anthony Toto, I'm a registered civil engineer with Cal Recycle. I'll be the debris group supervisor. I've worked with Cal Recycle just over a year, but I've worked with the Water Quality Control Board for 32 years and 1 month. So I'm happy to be back in Fresno.
Thank you, Anthony. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we want to focus this presentation for phase 2, a right of entry form completion. And I want to go through some of the resources that are available on our County of Fresno website. If you go to our website, click on that website. Next slide, please. And then click on debris removal. Next slide. Okay, here we have the phase 2 debris removal process. And then we have a document that says understanding the right of entry form. That entry form has very valuable information and can answer most of your questions regarding phase 2 cleanup. We also have a creek fire right of entry Adobe form, which you could fill online, sign and submit it online. And we also have a PDF form that you could complete, fill in, print and mail. Then we have a hard copy that you could print out and mail and sign and mail to our Department of Environmental Health Division. We have done quite a few reach out to the community. We have put flyers out to at the mailboxes up in the community. Meadow Lakes mailbox, Elder Springs mailbox, we have posted flyers. Pine Ridge Elementary mailbox, Shaver Springs mailbox, Big Creek Post Office, Pine Ridge neighborhood. We have also reached out to Ace Hardware Store in Auberry, and we have placed flyers, and we also have placed copies of ROE forms for you to complete. Big Creek School and Pine Ridge Elementary School. I want to thank Nicole Berna from Shaver Lake. She's born and raised there, and she was willing to help spread the word, email all the property owners that were affected by the creek fire. I want to really thank her for her efforts to spreading the word and letting everybody know regarding the phase 2 cleanup process. Also, Big Creek School, I want to thank Carson Brookway for helping during this process, spreading the word and providing applications at school for parents to pick up and complete and submit to our office. I want to go talk about a little bit more about the phase 2 process and why is it important to sign and submit the right of entry form. Once you sign and submit the right of entry form, that gives permission to city, state, and the Cal OES contractors to go on your permission, go on your property to complete the removal process. This process is completely out of no cost to the property owner, no cost out of the property owners, which it's really helpful, and we are very thankful for the state program to helping our community during this disaster. More information will be discussed when we move forward to Elise from Cal OES. Elise, would you like to talk about the process of phase 2?
Hi there. Thanks again for having me. So, like Deep introduced, the ROE is essential to this program. So we definitely need your permission to be able to service your property in a way that, you know, gets it cleaned back up to healthy environmental standards to where it's safe for you to rebuild. There are several steps involved with that phase 2. It begins with it begins with that right of entry form. And then after that, the first step in the process is a site assessment. So this includes things like taking photographs of the site, drawing it out, mapping things that are potentially hazardous to the crews, things that we're going to need to remove. And it's basically an overview of your particular parcel. Mapping out things like any wells, any septic tanks that we can visibly see, vehicles, how many are on the lot that will need to be removed. And this is more so for the crews performing the actual work so that they have a really clear picture of all of the work that's going to be done on that site and any hazards that might be in their way performing that, which we'll remove during the process. But that way everyone has a good overview of what they're getting into for your particular property. Right after there's a site assessment, there's what's called an asbestos assessment or an asbestos survey. This is where we have a certified asbestos consultant come out to your property, and they'll look for any kind of bulk asbestos, and they will sample anything that's suspected asbestos. And if anything is found and or comes back as positive, that asbestos will be abated with a certified asbestos contractor and disposed of totally properly and safely. And so the intent of that is, like Deep said, we've already undergone phase 1 in Fresno County. They finished today. And then this is just like a secondary catch to ensure that all of the remaining hazards from that really cursory sweep are gone before our teams physically work on that property to ensure their safety. If there's any kind of chimneys or maybe a still standing wall or anything, that'll get knocked down again prior to debris removal so that there's no kind of falling hazard on the crews that are performing the work. And then we get into the physical debris removal. So when we get to this stage, Property owners will be notified 24 to 48 hours in advance of crews being on your site. So those first two steps that I talked about with the site assessment and the asbestos assessment, you're not going to receive a phone call that we're ready and completing those two elements. But before we get to physical debris removal, so with our excavators, our skid steers, all of the equipment to remove that structural ash and debris, that's when you'll be notified. And by you, I mean the person identified on that right of entry form as the preferred point of contact. And when I say phone call, I mean whatever the preferred method is that's indicated on that right of entry. So if it's an email, if it's a phone call, and again, if you designated someone to kind of make decisions and follow this process in your place, like for example, if you have like a local relative or a daughter that you wanted to be the point of contact for this right of entry process, that is the person who will receive that 24 to 48 hour notification of work being done on that property. And so this mode of contact is the opportunity for that specified person or the homeowner to speak to the task force lead and the crews that are actually performing the work on that property. Kind of a comfort level piece with the right of entry. A lot of people are hesitant because you feel like it relinquishes any kind of control you've got over your property, and that's not the case. It's really just authorizing the government and its contractors to perform this work. And then in that sense, this 24 to 48 hour heads up will enable that homeowner to talk to the actual crews, walk them through your particular property, not on the property because of that health and safety issue, but point out anything that we need to know that we maybe missed on the site assessment or didn't flag properly. For example, if you're aware of exactly where that septic tank is, that's really helpful. And then there's also another element where our crews will take the time, I should say, to help you kind of recover any really sentimental items that you weren't able to find during maybe an initial sifting or something. So for example, if you know that you kept your wedding ring in a jewelry box in the back corner of your bedroom, and you couldn't find it, we can sift that particular area and see if we can recover it for you. It's not always a success story, but the success stories are really sweet. We've definitely found some Purple Hearts and some sentimental items. So it is possible. So if there's anything that's truly near and dear to your heart, we want to take the time to see if we can find that for you, kind of without simultaneously slowing down the operation. So that's an opportunity there. Again, you can be at the site during physical debris removal. We will set up exclusion zones so that you're away from any of that equipment or anything that's going to be hazardous to your health. We'll set up an exclusion zone for you to be there if preferred. And it's loud, I'm just going to tell you that. And let me see. If there's anything that you need us to know about your particular property, for example, where that grandma's ring was kept, or if you have a family pet cemetery, we don't want to disturb those things. So if you could indicate that on your right of entry form or talk to us during that crew walkthrough with you, those are things we want to know so that we can preserve any kind of sentimental things that are precious to you. We're not here to just make a bad situation worse. So we definitely want to support those special things. And so the order in which debris is removed, the end of it will vary a little bit, but basically we go through and look for metals first, and those will get recycled. The next elements are that ash and debris that we keep talking about, that structural stuff. And then we'll remove concrete. And this does include your foundation, which I'm sure will come up in a Q&A. Happy to address that. It will definitely include concrete. And then there's a soil sampling element that I'll get to in a minute. And then on this operations this year, we're also including any hazard trees. So standard with the program will be the removal of any trees that pose a hazard to the crews that are performing the work. Those are going to come out regardless because we can't, hinder their safety. Other hazard trees, when I mean that they're included in the program this year, we'll have an arborist come out and determine which trees are dead and or dying within the next 5 years, and those will be removed as well. where am I? Sorry. So the next step after debris removal is soil sampling. We're gonna test the soils for kind of heavy metals. Like I'm gonna leave the actual list of heavy metals to my Cal Recycle person, but we're gonna test for heavy metals and contaminants under everywhere that we removed any debris, and that soil sampling will also. I'm sorry, I skipped the steps. There will be when we remove all the ash and debris, we're gonna scrape 3 to 6 inches of soil along with that ash and debris to kind of remove anything that's like right on the surface, contaminating that soil. And then comes the soil sampling. And if those happen to come back higher than a background level that's going to be previously established by our environmental consultant in conjunction with county environmental health, then we'll scrape another 3 to 6 inches of that property. So you are going to see a depression when we're finished with your particular parcel, but it's not going to be like a hefty swimming pool sized amount. If anything continues to come back high after that second 3 to 6 inch scrape, we're going to bore it so we can really understand what's going on in the ground at that point and talk through it with environmental health. So this soil sampling process does slow the timeline a bit. It does take around 7 to 10 days, and then depending on the lab's backlog, to get that sample result back. So you may see, your property may look clear to you, and you may see little flags all over the place. Those flags indicate everywhere that we've sampled soil, and that's an indication that the physical stuff is done, but there's still a little bit of time left to go as far as the rest of the process to ensure that it's clear and free of hazards. The next step that's included in the program is erosion control measures, and we'll place best management practices wherever an engineer deems appropriate for your particular site, the slope. There's several things that go into account to ensure that we're not making this situation worse after having dug up the ground and whatnot. We use things like straw wattles and hydromulch, and this process can be waived for people who are going to rebuild fairly quickly. There's a form way later in the process where you could sign an erosion control waiver, because if you're going to rebuild pretty quickly, it's just going to undo everything we did as far as that erosion control. So we still save time and a little bit of effort there to get you moving on to that rebuild process. So after all these things are in place, there's what's called a final sign-off, and this is where our state supervision, likely the Cal Recycle gentleman that you met earlier, Anthony Toto, he and our team will do a walkthrough of the site to ensure that we've not missed anything. And on that approval, we're going to make sure that standards have been met, the debris is clear, everything's ready for our state stamp of approval. And then that gets handed over to your county environmental health partners. And once they concur with our findings, that'll signify that your property is ready to rebuild. So it'll open up like the permitting and whatnot. And I'll let the county speak to questions on that because I'm not privy to their specific process. But that's kind of the steps and timeline of the debris phase 2 process. So some questions that we get asked is like, how do we ensure that this is really a safe process? How are we not making it worse by dredging up all this ash and debris, moving it and whatnot? So our staff, including the contractors and every trickle down the line, is trained. They're fully covered in PPE that's appropriate for the site. We're monitored. We have a safety officer who checks on all the projects throughout. We have safety plans in place. We've got measures in place if anybody gets injured. Specific to the debris removal phase, we will thoroughly wet a property before any actual ash and debris movement, so that it's weighted down, so that when we're scooping, it doesn't become airborne. The elements are put into a lined dump truck, and then that liner is burrito wrapped to kind of encapsulate that ash and debris as it's making its way to a lined landfill that's certified and authorized to accept that type of hazardous material. And then along those haul routes, in addition to the site, in addition to sensitive receptor sites throughout the community, we're going to have air monitors. So at all points of the operation, we are QA, QC-ing our every effort to make sure that we're not making a terrible situation worse than it is. Another thing to talk about would be like priority areas. So when we start to do the work, we will, depending on where we have ROEs, we'll try to hit areas that are around a still standing home where people are actually living, or around a school that's in session, or any other sensitive receptor like a hospital or a care facility, things of that nature. And also watershed concerns, which I know is a big deal here. Your county team's been doing a great job at informing our teams about where their kind of priority areas are to avoid further contamination of the county. Another expectation to manage is the first submitted may not necessarily be the first property that's cleared, again, because we tie in that sensitive receptor element and some other factors, like if we have clusters of ROEs in certain areas, it's going to feed into that mobilization, demobilization of the crews so that we can be like the most efficient and the most cost effective and the most thorough. Another thing which is very pertinent to Fresno County is the Shaver Lake and Huntington Lake area are at really high elevations. So the weather is going to have a definite impact on the speed and efficiency of our operation. So just keep that in mind. We'll be working as fast and safely as we can, but there might be some things out of our control. I'm just going to touch on kind of the two major differences between cleaning up with maybe a private contractor and our phase 2 program is that our program 100% is going to remove your foundation. Another thing is private versus the state program is the timeline. We're subject to the state's timeline, the weather factors and all that, which would meet a private contractor as well. But those are the two major differences with signing up for the state program. And one more thing to touch on, which I'm sure there'll be questions about, is the insurance factor. So what I should have started with, sorry, I forgot, there is no out-of-pocket cost to a homeowner for this program. So what I mean by that is if there's no insurance, then there's nothing for the government to collect, and there's nothing that homeowner is going to owe for phase 2. If there is homeowners insurance, and it's the type of homeowners insurance with a debris clause, a specific amount set aside for debris, that's the max amount that the government is going to collect as a result of this effort. And by max amount, what I mean is, I don't remember if Deep alluded to it, but on your county websites, there's something called an eligibility chart, and it'll let you know like which things are eligible for phase 2 and which are not. So anything that's not eligible that's left on your property, like I'm going to just go out on a limb and say like maybe you have a chicken coop. That's not necessarily something that's hazardous. That might be something that gets left behind because it's not in the contaminated footprint, right? So if there's anything that a homeowner needs to clear after our phase 2 is complete, let's say you have a debris line item of $15,000 and it costs you $5,000 to remove little stuff like a fence or that chicken coop. Keep that receipt, and then when the government goes to collect that amount, it's going to be the difference. So the max amount on that sample would be $10,000 that the government is eligible to collect. It's not going to touch your I don't remember that lines of insurance anymore, like the property, the dwelling, the structure, like that stuff's not happening, just the debris clause. And then if you have the type of umbrella policy that's just like a one lump payout, you'll not, the government is only eligible to collect any difference that's left over after you've either repurchased a new home or rebuilt the destroyed home. So those are kind of the two main types of insurance collection topics. And I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, so I'm going to take a pause right there and drink some water.
Thank you, Elise. That was really good information that you provided. And we'll get to the questions at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share with you guys what we have so far, the number of ROEs we have received. We have received so far 123 right of entry forms. Total count of damage partial is 443, correct. And we have 33 owner initiated cleanup. That process is through our environmental health division. If a property owner chooses to hire their own contractor, there's a process in place through our website, County of Fresno website, debris removal process, that owner initiated hires a contractor and submits a work plan, which is approved by our environmental health specialist. And once that process is approved, the contractor could start their work process of removal of debris. And next slide, please. Okay, now I would like Anthony Toto from Cal Recycle to share some of their Cal Recycle's role during the phase 2 cleanup.
Cal Recycle is partners with Cal OES in the debris removal process. I'll be acting as the debris group supervisor and basically going out and making any kind of calls in the field. Depending, if you got a retaining wall, we would like to leave it in place if it's retaining soil behind it. Looking at the different aspects, doing the final sign-offs to ensure that the property has been properly cleaned, all the debris is gone, there's no rebar. We like to say that a 3-year-old could walk across the property and not be injured. That's kind of our standard for final sign-offs. Basically, that's about it. We're in partners with. I'm also doing the environmental work, making sure we get the right permits. We're working with the Water Board, CAL FIRE, Army Corps of Engineers, and we're working through that process. I'd be happy to answer specific questions if you have them, but that's about it for me. Oh, Cal Recycle is also managing the contract for this process, for both the assessment and monitoring, and then for the actual debris removal. So there'll be 2 contracts. We just, Arcadis is doing the assessment and monitoring, and we're still going through the final process for selecting the contractor for actually removing the debris, and we're hoping to have a notice to proceed soon.
Thank you, Anthony. That was
Sure.
really good information. I think we're ready to answer some of the questions that we have from the community. Elise, do you have anything more to add before we go to the questions?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to say timeline-wise that with what Anthony mentioned about the environmental consultant already being contracted, we're working with them in the background. We're giving them a lot of planning data that the county provided about the roads and parcel data and whatnot, so that we can pre-plan how many site assessors and whatnot can be in the area. We're going to work through not on Thanksgiving, but Friday and Saturday, pre-planning everything that we can so that we've got site assessors on the ground beginning Monday.
Thank you, Elise. I think we could go back and see some of the questions we have. One of the question is, if my property has multiple names on the title, does everyone have to sign? How do they sign if you're, let's see here, if Adobe signed from on the internet? So the question I think is, does every property owner that is on the deed needs to sign the right of entry form? Elise, you want to take that, or John?
So if you're looking to me for that answer, it's actually, so the preference is to have all owners sign that document. I think from that question, I'm hearing that maybe not more than one person can sign that Adobe fillable form, and that would be something for IT to address. And then we'll have more conversations with the county. It's a county decision on whether we're going to allow the one property owner to sign with maybe a notary of the other one authorizing the first one, but that's a deep, we can talk about that. But the preference is for all owners to sign so that we know we have consent, so that we're not, again, making that bad situation any worse.
Wonderful, thank you. Next, we have another one. How do I get a copy of my ROE? When I submitted online, it did not allow me to make a copy. I could answer that question. If you did submit a ROE and you did not, and you would like to get a copy of the ROE, please email our Creek Fire email with your APN and your address. We will email you back a copy of your ROE. Next question. Okay, what if I want to keep my concrete foundation?
So again, Elisa Caloias, if you sign up for the private property debris removal government program, it's an all or nothing. We're going to take your foundation. So your option there would be review the county's opt out or private contractor. I'm sorry, private contractor option. There and. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The state program is going to remove your foundation. There's no question. So I would look at your options with that opt-out program to see what the process is for potentially keeping your foundation with a private contractor removal.
Thank you, Elise. Okay, when do you take a background soil sample? After the cleanup is completed, when do you take a background soil sample, or do you?
So background sampling for our with our environmental consultant is going to happen. I mean, really starting Monday, I'm assuming, when they have boots on the ground, and then we're going to be pulling from areas that are kind of within the burn area, but don't have structural debris on it, so that we can get an understanding of what is in that soil that's naturally occurring. Because some odd things that you wouldn't think are naturally occurring actually are, like arsenic. I was really surprised my first debris app when I found that out. So the background sampling is going to happen at the very beginning, and then concurrently with the project until we have that background level that's agreed upon with the environmental health, who's more in tune with this area.
Thank you. Another one. What is the average amount of time it takes to clean and release the property back to the property owner?
So, and it's a really, really hard question. It really depends on a lot of factors. So the environment getting in our way, the size of the house, the slope of the house, the amount of debris, whether or not those soil samples come back higher or lower than the background sample. So really the thing that I can more educatedly speak to is, if you have like a standard 1,200 square foot home and like 2 vehicles, we could probably knock out that physical debris removal within a day. Again, that's going to be slowed down. The return process is going to be slower because then we have to do that 7 to 10 day timeline for a soil sample. If it requires that additional 3 to 6 inch rescrape, that's going to, and then new testing, that's going to add another 7 to 10 days to that timeline. So I would say like a safe, I can't even answer that, I should say. Maybe like best case scenario, I'm going to throw out a month. If everything went perfectly, you'd have it back in less than a month.
Thank you, Elise. I guess it's all case by case, depending on the size of the property and what it entails.
Yeah.
Next question we have is, What if a contractor comes across a unknown septic tank and that septic tank collapses? Is that something that the property owner has to take care of, or will it be taken care of during the phase 2 cleanup?
So here's where that right of entry form is essential. And the more information that you can tell us about your property, the better we can service it and service it safely. So I think in the right of entry form, there's an element that asks you to mark out where your septic tank is. If you don't know exactly, I don't know if the county keeps plans on that stuff for reference, or if you can even mark out like overestimate where you think it is so that we do not crush, break, or fall into that septic tank. Every avoidance will be to not have that happen. It should be marked and flagged and roped off. The program does not include removal of septic tanks.
Thank you, Elise. And I think that's part of the assessment process, is to see if you could identify some of the hazards like septic tank or anything, other items on the property. Another question is, what about utilities? Do you cap off water, septic, gas, extra?
Yes, we do. We'll cut and cap all of those utility elements. Good question.
Thank you. Another anonymous question, will septic be checked and left in place if undamaged by fire?
So that ties into the last statement where whether it's intact or not intact, the program will not touch your septic tank.
So that's something, if they want to have it pumped or serviced, they would have to contact a private pumper.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, we got a lot of questions today. This is really, really good. Where can we find the map that shows the property that have signed the ROE and which are owner cleanup? It was shown on screen. Okay, currently that particular property is not a public view. We are working with our IT team to come up with something that's going to be public facing in future. But currently that is just for us to log the ROEs as they come in. And that's for purposes to keep track and for Cal OES to work off, so we could put that information also on the Google Drive where Cal Recycle and Cal OES can access that information. But we are working on something in the near future that our public could view that. Next one, anonymous. How long is this phase expected to last? What is the latest we can expect the debris removed to be completed?
Yeah, another great question that reminds me that I didn't talk about deadlines or timelines. I can't remember, Deep, if you covered that right of entry form is going to be due by December 15th. A completion date is a tall order. It's kind of like estimating what it'll take for the one property to be cleared. So again, depending on weather, factors we run into, any issues with access. Overall, so not specific to Fresno, the overall goal throughout the state of California, and I know this was a big impact to Fresno, but 25 other counties burned simultaneously this year. So this is the biggest undertaking that Cal OES and Cal Recycle have taken on thus far. I mean, every year brings kind of a new surprise. But the statewide goal for everything to go perfectly smoothly is to try to be finished by May 1st. But that is a hefty goal that we are gonna aim to complete. But again, weather dependent, circumstance dependent, issue dependent.
Thank you, Elise. I want to go back. What Elise mentioned was that we would like to get all the right of entry forms signed by December 1st and between December 15th, we would like to get all those done so we could have that in place where Cal Recycle and Cal OES contractors would start the phase 2 debris removal process. Another great question is, what debris other than the main house will you remove?
So I think Deep mentioned at the beginning on your county website, there's the FAQs, the right of entry form, and then also, this is not in color, but this eligibility chart. This will let you know, because I don't have it memorized, I'll be honest there. Things like vehicles, boats, those are eligible. A destroyed garage or a shed, that's eligible. Foundations are going to be removed. Hazard trees are going to be removed, and any kind of basements or wine cellars will be removed, and then that depression is going to be fenced in for safety purposes. And then that's in addition to the actual structural home.
Yeah, thanks, Elise. That information, the eligibility chart, is on this phase 2 debris removal process. It's a really good information where you could see what's eligible to be removed, what's not. And also has a lot of good questions, frequently asked questions that could be really helpful in submitting the right of entry form. Another question we have, will you only remove dead, dying trees that are hazards to the crew or other right of ways? What about the other dead trees?
Question.
So I'm gonna repeat that. So will the government's program only remove hazard trees that are hazardous to the crews performing the work and hazardous to the rights of way? And the answer to those two questions is yes. And then I take a second and double check that we're not taking any other dead or dying trees that are on the property.
It's dead or dying trees within 5 years that are FEMA eligible. And
that's not
for the PPDR.
I know, sorry, that's a funding source question, and with your county's well versed in the funding mechanisms here, and then FEMA, this county did not get the FEMA level of public assistance, but we are supporting phase 2 with the state funding assistance program, which is called the California Disaster Assistance Act. So that was just a little nuance there. We are in this southern branch, we're supporting 7 counties, which fall under 2 different major declarations, which fall under different categories within those declarations. So I just wanted to specify there before we confuse you any further. But sorry, continue.
So yeah, it'll be the right-of-way trees.
Thank you. One question we have is what will happen to the retaining walls?
Retaining walls greater than 4 feet will be left in place because they're holding back soil, and we don't want to have any kind of soils coming sloughing down onto the property. And it'll be on a case-by-case basis. Most retaining walls will be left in place. If they're less than 4 feet, we will be taking them and then sloping the land to 3-to-1, 2-to-1, depending.
Okay. Thank you. Another question I have, is the debris removal program only for houses that are completely destroyed? So I guess the question must be that if they're partially destroyed, would they still qualify? I guess they could look at the eligibility chart for that as well.
Correct. Yes.
That is on the eligibility chart. Generally, houses with 1 or more walls standing are not eligible. Homes with only that 1 wall standing may be eligible. It's a case-by-case basis. We'll have to come out once you submit the right of entry form. We'll go out and identify whether or not that home is actually eligible.
Okay, thank you. John, do you have any questions?
I did see one other question on there, and that was basically, is the right of entry form the only form that I need to complete to get my property cleaned up? And I
So
believe the answer on that is yes, that is the only form that you'll need to complete. Do you have anything else to add, Elise?
That's correct. So the right of entry form is the only form that's needed for you to fill out, but there's some other documentation that would really help the process. For example, if you do have homeowners insurance, providing a copy of that declarations page at the time of the right of entry, so that the county, when those funds go to get collected, the government can just work directly with your insurance provider. And then on that note, with the declarations page, I know some time has passed since the fire actually occurred, and some plans may have like switched into that next year's coverage. So make sure when you submit that declarations page that the declarations page is specific to covering the time period of the time of the fire.
Thank you, Elise. I want to make a couple of points here. Is that when the community property owners are submitting their right of entry forms, please make sure that all the documents that need signature are signed, and please include the insurance declaration page with that. And when you're submitting, if you're submitting by mail, we will email you back to letting you know that we received this form and has been approved. And if you're submitting it online, you'll get an automatic email back. But please make sure that all the information that is required to be completed, please complete that information. Also, some of the questions we have is some of the property owners would like to get their phase 1 completed by a private contractor, and they had already submitted the ROE form to our office, and they would like to remove it. One of the process that's involved in that is you need to sign the withdrawal form. So we will be emailing you back a withdrawal form that you could sign and submit it back to us if you would like to withdraw your right of entry form and you would like to go through a private contractor to remove the phase 2 debris from your property. Any other questions?
Withdrawal form that Deep just mentioned, I believe, sorry, I don't have it memorized, but I believe that the final page of that right of entry packet is the withdrawal form. And so be mindful when you're signing those documents that you don't just kind of fill out the first billion pages and then also sign that withdrawal form, because it confuses the process on whether you actually wanted to submit the ROE or whether you wanted to withdraw. Ensure that you didn't want to be part of the program. So just be mindful of that last page and signing it when you submit your right of entry form. Also, you'll notice at the bottom of each of those pages that it asks for I believe your APN and your address, and it's really important to include that information on every page, especially if you're going to add any additional pages that help us better service your property, to also add the name and parcel number and address to the extra added documents as well.
Thank you, Lise. That's really good information. Another question we just got is, I mailed a ROE. How do I know it was received? Can I call to verify? Yes, I could take that. Yes, you could call our office, Environmental Health Division, 600-3271, and you could ask for me, Deep Sidhu, or anybody in the program that could help you. And we'll call you back and let you know that we received your ROE. Also, I want to emphasize the fact that, if you have issues with technology and need assistance in completing the right of entry form, please contact our office. We will do the best we can to reach out to you to get you the right of entry form, mail it out to you. Even we'll reach out to community members to get you that right of entry form to be completed and submitted. We got another question. Let's see here. My pole barn, which is separate structure, was burned. Can I keep my foundation? I think Elise answered that question prior. If phase 2 is being cleaned by Cal OES through the state program, foundation is going to be removed. Am I correct, Elise?
Yes.
Thank you, Elise. see any more questions. Okay, there's another one here. A very good question. What is the latest we should get the withdrawal form to you?
Deep, you
go
want to
ahead? Go ahead, Elise. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry, we're all remote in this COVID environment, so trying to not step on each other's toes. So the latest for the program, the latest that you can withdraw a form is before we get to the actual debris removal. So that doesn't signify a specific time frame, but when we get your right of entry form, we're going to do that site assessment and we're going to do that asbestos assessment. And even if we've completed those first two steps, you can still withdraw your ROE at that point. But once we start moving actual structural debris, at that point you're in for the long haul. As far as a deadline, that's going to be kind of, in past incidents, it would be that your withdrawal from the state program would have to coincide with the deadline of being able to opt in to a private contractor program. But for the state's program, you can withdraw at any point until we physically remove debris.
Thank you, Elise. A really good point. I want to talk about a little bit about the withdrawal form. If you would like to withdraw, you could contact our office. And we will remove that right of entry form from the database, and we will store it, and we'll request you to complete the withdrawal form and submit it to our office as well. Also, the email, if you have further questions regarding the phase 2 right of entry form, you could always email our department with questions. That email is creekfire@fresnocountyca.gov. And we'll respond to you as soon as possible regarding your question. I think we're coming close to an hour now. We got one more. Here we go. This is a very common thing we're seeing right now with the ROEs. Question is, can I put multiple APNs I own on one ROE?
For the state program, no, we're going to need a separate right of entry form for each of those parcels, so that we can make sure that all the documentation that goes along with each parcel is kept nice and tidy for the program.
One question I have, Elise, is what I have seen. So some of the right of entry forms that we have received is the property owners have submitted right of entry forms with 3 different APNs on it, but with the same address. What we have done currently, or what we are doing currently, is we are attaching each of those right of entry forms to each of the APNs, meaning under different APNs. Is that suffice, or do they need to submit separate ROE forms for each APN?
No, that process that you developed is perfect, actually. As long as we've got their authorization, and then you can attach it to each separate document so that it goes along with our files, that's perfect.
Okay, thank you, Lise. John, how are we doing on the time?
I think we're good on the time. We can wait around for any other questions. We're here for the public, so as long as the public has questions come in, we're good to go. We'll give them a couple more minutes to see if there's anything else that they'd like to ask, and then we'll be done for tonight.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great. This is awesome. We love the questions. They're great questions, and we're here to help the community get through this disaster and get their property back for the rebuilding of them. I just want to go back and really say that we really want to reach out and help individuals that don't have the ability to travel or submit these ROEs, and we want to offer our assistance, and just all you have to do is contact our office and let us know how we could help during this process.
So Elise, there was another question that came up last week on the meeting, and that was basically somebody had a well house, their well house burnt down, and I think did we ask that tonight? The well house burnt down, and they were wondering, do you have to take that structure then potentially damage my well, or what happens there?
So wells are similar to septics in that we're gonna avoid it, making it worse, having anything fall in there. It's basically gonna be fenced off. And that might fall under one of those things where anything that's left behind by the state's program that was not eligible, what you would use your debris clause to remove and then subtract that from that debris clause amount. So similar to, oh, sorry, CalRecycle has something to add.
On previous projects, we've used hand crews to sweep and get debris away from the well. We wouldn't use any heavy equipment near it.
That's perfect, thank you. And Deep, if we see no more questions on there, I think we're good.
Okay. In terms of a few more comments, I just want to request all the community members and property owners that are submitting the ROEs is to just thoroughly complete the application, sign where it needs to be signed, submit the right documents, especially those want special requests such as they want to be there during the cleanup process or they want to save something. Some of the stuff that Elise went over, that please document that on the ROE, or you even attach another form to it that you would like a special request. And also, if you have gates locked or have some access that need to be provided for the state program to get through your property to start the cleanup process, please note that as well on the right of entry form. We are reviewing a lot of forms, and we want to make sure that your property is on it. If you have any questions, you could always contact our office, and with an APN and an address, and we will search that and we make sure we get that answer to you. Also, make sure that your property address and your APN are matching. If you don't know your APN, you could always contact our office, and we will search and figure out which is the correct APN, and we'll put that in your application. So we are here to help and help you in any way we can to get through this process. We want to get as many as right of entry forms here because CalUS and state programs are here to help the community. And like Elise mentioned before, this is no cost, no out-of-pocket cost to you. Just like phase 1 was no out-of-pocket cost to no property owners. This is a really good program, and we want to work our community to help them during this disaster.
And Deep, it does look like there was a couple more questions that just came in.
Okay. Do you know where you're starting on Monday?
That's a great question. Like I mentioned, we are in the planning phase with our environmental consultant right now. So we're going to be figuring that out over the holiday week. But we will only be starting in places where we've got rights of entry forms. That is the one solid answer I can give.
Thank you, Elise. Next question. Does the county require us to remove the slab of a non-residential structure?
So I believe that question is probably saying that I had a little tough shed or something in the back, and I had it on a concrete slab. May or may not have been permitted. If phase 2 is not going to come in and demo that slab, I'm assuming no one would touch the slab, and I don't believe that you'd have to do anything else with the county on that because it was pre-existing. At least, do you have anything to add on that? If it's a slab of a 10 by 12 tough shed in the back that burnt down, and the owner is saying, yeah, you know what, I can handle the debris on that. You guys, do you have to remove that slab too?
Good question. So the state's program is for anything on that eligibility chart, it's going to be an all or nothing type of all in or all out. For anything that's over 120 square feet that has a slab, the slab's going to come out, regardless of whether it was a residence. So if it's over 120 square feet, we're definitely taking that slab as well.
Thank you, Elise. I think in the closing, I think we should, I don't know if we should wait a little longer, John, to see if we have any more questions.
I think it seems that we're probably okay now. Those two came in just right at the very end there. So
let's guys, there's one more question.
Okay.
Okay. Are contractors going to be paid to remove snow so they can do debris removal?
Very interesting question. So the straightforward answer to that is no. The more descriptive response to that is we cannot work in the snow. A site that we can't see can't properly be assessed. We can't check for asbestos safely, and then our excavators, our trucks, everybody that's working on that operation, it's not necessarily safe to drive our trucks on those heavy trucks on the icy roads. And then in addition, we can't excavate into frozen ground. So it definitely depends on the level of snow, the incoming weather, whether that's going to kind of soften it up, melt it a bit, but we will not be removing snow from a parcel in order to service it.
Thank you, Elise. Okay. Well, this is the second event we have. We were talking about phase 2 removal. The first one we had was on November 12th, and we'll continue to have these. Also, if you have any more questions, you could always email the creekfire@fresnocountyca.gov, and we will also have more of these next week, and we'll post those as we go moving forward. I want to thank everybody, the mountain community, for making time to listening to this presentation. I want to thank Elise, Anthony, John, for making time, and this was really good information. With that, I want to leave it to John for closing comments.
If I can just about ditto what Deep just stated, we do thank you all for participating with us tonight. Your input is critical to us, and in order for us as a county and as individual communities up in the mountains to make a full recovery, we do need everyone's help, and we all need to act as a team. So this virtual meeting here, I believe, is going to be posted on Facebook, and I don't know where else. Sim, you may want to add on that. But yeah, it should be posted up here shortly. And again, thank everybody for attending, and I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving to the best of their ability.
And then I'll add to John's comment. We will be posting and archiving this on not only Facebook but YouTube as well. So if you guys join live, thank you. But if someone needs to critically see this video, so forth, neighbors, residents that you might know that live up in the foothill community, you can share it with them. Just visit healthyfresnocounty.com or Healthy Fresno County Facebook page, and you can get the link from there. And we'll be posting and renewing all of our Facebook posts with a YouTube link.
Thank you, everybody. Have a happy Thanksgiving as well. Be safe.